women's head soccer coach at Weber for 15 years. And prior to that, you had a bunch of other soccer coaching experience. So I want to get started talking about where that love for soccer began. I'm sure it's safe to assume that you do love the sport. So.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you. Thank you for having me. And yes, I get that question quite a bit. And, growing up in Southern California, I mean, that's a sport that you can play year round. And not being a very, huge person in stature, I started to gravitate towards sports like soccer, baseball, things that you didn't have to be big to play. And, from there, it's just, obviously like any other adolescent, you start to kind of shift towards things that you do well. And then I played, and I played at Weber State on the men's club team and coached the men's club team there, and coached high school for a long time. I don't know, 13 years on the men's side. And so yeah, I've spent my fair share of time around a soccer field.
Absolutely. So I want to talk to you about this transition from head women's soccer coach to athletic director. What do you miss most about coaching?
I've had that question asked a lot of me. And, it's not like I have a ton of time to sit back and think and put my feet up and say, okay, well, what is it that, do I really miss that? Or I think because you just shift from one thing to the next, and you jump into that with both feet. And so it doesn't give me a ton of time to miss what I was doing before. I know when I go watch the games, in all of the sports now, I have an appreciation for just the competition. And I mean, I could use some cliches and say, I miss the smell of the grass and being out in the sun. I'm not nearly as tan anymore as I used to be. But I think that probably the biggest thing in when you're coaching is that you have a direct link to the student athletes on a regular basis, and you see that group of, whether it's 6 or 30 or 100, you are in constant contact with those kids. And so you maybe feel like as a coach that your impact is more specific with those student athletes. And when the further you get away from that, when you're not coaching, obviously there's a lot of other things you have to do to give this coaches that now need tools to be able to do that really well. So it's just a different set of responsibilities. And so you move a little bit further away from being able to do that on a regular basis and have those conversations. Yes, I still do that, but just not maybe as frequently and across more sports.
Right. So how has that transition been from focusing, your effort on soccer to now all of these sports within your university?
Well, certainly I've been in the Division I setting for a while, and at Weber State for my fair share of years. And so I've had the opportunity to have been around a number of different athletic directors and administrators, and so that transition from the aspect of how I've been supported from the administration, for example, and the other coaches, the student athletes, they've made it pretty seamless, if you will. In particular, the administration, and we have a tremendous administration, as you well know. And President Morrison, our vice president, just everyone in general has made it so it's been pretty seamless.
Absolutely. So it's pretty evident that you love Weber State. I know that you got your bachelor's there, your master's there, but even prior to that, tell me about your connection to the university.
Okay, so I have some history there, obviously. So the short version is that my great-grandfather, Aaron Tracy, was the president at Weber State University, and certainly I grew up spending time with my grandparents and my cousins, and that was always something that was just part of us, that Weber State was the greatest place ever. And so that's where the connection started. My father graduated from there. I graduated from there. My wife graduated from my daughters graduated from there. My great grandfather, my uncles. So I'm like a 5th generation graduate and which is odd because I wasn't raised in Utah. I was raised in Southern California. So I'd say that's a pretty strong connection. And then once you get there, it's pretty apparent that the people, as if just like anywhere else, become the thing that keeps you there. And we have, tremendous people at Weber State, and so it's an honor to have been able to be there as long as I have been, and to be there now.
Going back to just your family history at Weber State and really just being a fifth generation graduate,
something like
Weber
that,
State, something like
right.
that. I just want to hear about how you have seen the university evolve in the time that you've been involved with it.
Wow, I could go down a laundry list of things. I think that there's been huge changes from the name, whether it was, from going from a college to a university, the facilities, the campus. Our administration has done over the last 10 years an unbelievable job of just the buildings and the facilities and everything that's changed. And obviously there's different degrees, and so there's been a lot of change, and being able to see that change from a perspective of 1988 to 2020, sure, and the institution and the community should be proud of that, because it is much different now, and I would say better. In particular from opportunity standpoint.
Well, it's great, definitely. And so I just would like to hear also just about the experiences and the successes that you had as a coach. How have those experiences prepared you for this position, and what do you look forward to taking from coaching and contributing to this?
No, that's a pretty good question, actually. I think that I think it's like anything else. I think that whether it's a business, that you're running, and then you transition into any other, if you transitioned into this particular role, where there's that aspect of it. In terms of coaching, I think that it does give you the opportunity to create or develop some insight into when the rubber hits the road, when the athletes are getting off the bus and heading to the field, or they're heading to study hall to do their homework, or they're trying to figure out what classes to take. You have a different vantage point from that. And then on top of that, being able to have the opportunity to be involved with a women's sport, Title IX and all the things that go along with that, and be, at the ground level, and doing that on a daily basis has given me over time, it's given me a different perspective than I otherwise wouldn't have. And I think all of those things, and again, one more time, along that way as a coach, I had so much support from the administration, not just in the athletic department, but on lower campus, that they were always willing to be there if I had questions, or try and figure out ways to solve problems. And those things they all play into it. Having a daughter that played a Division I sport, and seeing what that's like from her vantage point, and listening and hearing those things, it just allows you to hopefully have some experience that might help someone else down the line, in this role.
Right. So you talk about having a daughter who played a Division I sport, but what you didn't mention is that you coached your daughter from 2011 to 2018, right? Tell me what that was like.
Well, first of all, you're pretty on top of it.
Thank you.
Clearly done. I'm thinking you know more about me than I know about me. So maybe I should ask you about my daughter. Like, what's she up to right now?
I don't know. How's she doing?
I think that was probably, and that's a fun question, because not that it was always fun for her. I think that there's a set of challenges, and she certainly met those challenges. For her, as playing for her dad as a Division I coach, she clearly always had to view herself as she couldn't just be good. She had to be constantly pushing the envelope as one of the best. Otherwise, there was always going to be those questions. As to, well, you just play because your dad's a coach. I think that's an obvious statement, but she crushed that, And so it was for me, it was a different experience, I'm sure, than it was for her. I mean, I enjoyed it immensely, and certainly had challenges around dinner time sometimes. Around the dinner table, my wife would have to say, "Listen, okay, look, we're not talking about any sports, any soccer, anything at dinner."
Safe space.
Safe space. So, but she handled it really well, and certainly had a successful career.
Absolutely. Well, I'm sure she was very lucky to have you as a dad growing up. I'm sure you guys kicked a soccer ball around quite a bit.
That did happen, and that is kind of you to say. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today. That is Tim Crompton from Weber State University.